In March and April of 1971, Hunter S. Thompson and Oscar Zeta Acosta took 2 trips to Las Vegas. These trips would live in infamy in what is now known as the novel Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. One of these trips, they were on assignment for Sports Illustrated, and another for Rolling Stone magazine. First story that is covered is important for how Thompson and Acosta met. In 1970, Los Angeles, during a protest for the Vietnam War, a riot broke out and police were, of course, called to break it up, and there were 3 casualties of this. During the riot, there would be 3 victims of the police: Lynn Ward, Angel Diaz, and the one we'll be focused on out of these 3 who were killed in the protest is Ruben Salazar. Except he was in a bar away from the protest with a friend when it happened. A tear gas canister was thrown in the bar and hit Salazar in the head, causing his death. Salazar was a known speaker about problems with the police, so the mysterious incident with his death, people were quite confused on how he died, since he was not even in the protests. So, Oscar Acosta, wrote to Thompson about this story, saying, he should cover this story. So Thompson flew out to Los Angeles. Acosta, not wanting to be seen speaking with the journalist, decided to tag along with Thompson to Las Vegas, and basically they did the story there as they partied and other such activities. The second trip was directly tied to Las Vegas, as Thompson was on assignment for Sports Illustrated to cover the Mint 400, the now oldest off-road racing event in the U.S. To understand how the true events of reality are meddled with into the book, we must look at Thompson's style of journalism, gonzo journalism. Thompson created this style, and here's just a definition of what it is. Gonzo journalism, a style of reporting that places the reporter at the center of the story in a highly personal and participatory way. The gonzo journalist relates facts in a subjective manner and typically employs satire, hyperbole, scathing critique, and shocking descriptions as part of the story. Basically, it's journalism that uses facts and fictional accounts to blur the lines between the two. Throughout both trips, he took notes and random audio recordings on the happenings of their adventures through Las Vegas.
I advise you to get a taco burger, try it out.
Oh, I see, yeah, the taco has meat in it. Of course, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, I'll try that.
Many of this would be used as inspiration or sometimes direct quotes. Thompson also employs fake names for the novel, himself as Real Duke and Costa as Dr. Gonzo. I think that's enough background information, so let's just jump into the summary. Sit back and let me tell you a story of 2 men on a drug-fueled road trip to the American dream.
This is LSD, peyote, DMT, STP, mescaline, psilocybin, hashish, and marijuana. That's right, marijuana is also a psychedelic drug.
It's stimulating, mind-expanding, safer to use than alcohol.
But the only time I think I've been able to understand myself was on an acid trip. Then things were really clear.
Hippies sitting on the street in their bare feet, and women couldn't walk around them. As far as I'm concerned, they should have been charged there and taken and incarcerated.
Marijuana? LSD or mescaline?
If all the people that took acid, the people that I know that have taken acid, we can look out at the other people that haven't, and they can tell us we're crazy, and we can say, well, you haven't seen anything yet.
What about the drug culture? There's an awful lot in your books about drugs, and you talk about taking them yourself all the time. Is this essential to the time you're living in, or is it something personal with you?
I think it was for a while in San Francisco in the middle 60s. And to understand that, to be a part of it, to be accepted, and to write about it. Which is not to say that's why I did it. I did it because it was fun. I never really thought of myself as either a spokesman for or as a part of the drug culture, although a lot of other people do. I have to be a person who does most things to excess. And so it just would be normal that I do it with drugs. I'm pretty selective, and I've learned a lot. And maybe I've burnt my mind out, maybe I've gone crazy, maybe I've destroyed myself.
This is pretty much going to turn into like the literary equivalent of like Drunk History for a little bit, I guess. Yeah, let's. I just thought it was, it makes sense, since we're covering a book on a guy that does drugs. I mean, I don't do drugs, so I don't do drugs. The novel begins with Rael Duke and Dr. Gonzo speeding down the desert road in a bright red convertible. They're out there to cover the Mint 400, and they need to get to the hotel room before press check-in closes. Not only is he getting a free hotel out of the deal, but he's also got $300 of expenses, which he has already spent most of on drugs. We had 2 bags of grass, 75 pellets of mescaline, 5 sheets of high-powered blotter acid, a salt shaker half full of cocaine, and a whole galaxy of multicolored uppers, downers, screamers, laughers, and also a quart of tequila, a quart of rum, a case of Budweiser, a pint of raw ether, and 2 dozen of Mills. Throughout the novel, the drug and alcohol use is almost constant. With every other page, one of the characters is popping, or drinking, or smoking, or snorting something, which makes most of their experiences paranoid and frantic. A lot of the experiences and conversations they have in the book are pretty much everyday regular conversations, but are sort of put to the extreme due to the drugs they're taking. That's the fear part of the title, the paranoia they get from all the drugs and the experiences that cause the paranoia because of the drugs. In fact, Duke is so paranoid that whenever they pick up a hitchhiker, they think the hitchhiker is going to report them to the police for the drugs they're taking, and he has this frantic thought to take the hitchhiker's head off and bury it in the desert. A lot of what they do and say as well throughout the novel doesn't really make much sense. Like, it just makes sense to them, not anyone around them. The hitchhiker eventually jumps out of the car anyway, so they don't have to like bury him out in the desert. He just jumps out of the car because he sees them like snorting drugs, and he freaks out and jumps out of the car because they're acting insane. After the kid runs away, they speed off to Vegas. With Duke's drugged out state, signing into the hotel and getting the press passes proves to showcase his insanity as he starts yelling in the hotel lobby about lizards and the floor being made of blood. The floor is blood. He thinks the floor is blood due to his drug use. The next day is when the debauchery truly starts, though, because Rael Duke tries to work under his condition that he's in, with all the drugs, and they go and they watch the Mint 400 race, and they ride this dune buggy with this guy drives this dune buggy, through the desert with him and this photographer who's trying to get coverage of the race, but they're basically just lost going through like this dust and dirt, and they can't really see any of the motorcycles. He gives up after the driver spills his beer, and then he yells, "You're fired!" And then he has him drive him back to the bar. And then he pretty much just gave up on the assignment altogether and goes about to his real assignment of, finding the American dream, or what he believes to be his real assignment. So pretty much abandoning their assignment altogether, not entirely abandoning it, but just sort of taking weird breaks or following his true assignment of the American dream or whatever. They decide to drive around Vegas for a little while, going to these different casinos and getting into like these weird experiences. And He even gets like yelled at by these armed guards because he's like driving, or I don't think they're armed guards, I think they're just regular guards, but he's like driving on the sidewalk, but he thinks it's a parking space.
You can't park your car here.
Why not? Is this not a reasonable place to park?
Reasonable? You're on a sidewalk.
The duo eventually find themselves at Circus Circus, and I think Circus Circus just sounds like this really cool place to be in the 70s. Like, it's got these trapeze artists that like go above the patrons and like, you know, do their trapeze act, and then there's like a merry-go-round bar where they sit at the merry-go-round. And while researching this video, there doesn't seem to be that anymore at Circus Circus. Like, they seem to have got rid of a lot of that stuff. Ew, gross. Oh man, that smells like beer. Duke and Gonzo are drinking at the merry-go-round bar, where Gonzo sort of had this drug-caused, you know, freak out. Like, he's basically like freaking out, you know, and he's like, I have the fear, and he's on the merry-go-round, and he's too scared to get off the merry-go-round until eventually Duke has to drag him off of the merry-go-round. And as they're leaving, Gonzo thinks the people in Circus Circus are after him, and like a guy kicks him in the back, or that's what he thinks anyways, you know. So they leave Circus Circus and go back to the Mint Hotel, where he tells Gonzo to just take a shower or whatever. Duke goes down to the early morning gamblers, and sort of reflects on the American dream by seeing all these people try to win big. Now off the escalator and into the casino, big crowds still tight around the crap tables. Who are these people? These faces, where do they come from? They look like caricatures of used car dealers from Dallas, but they're real. And sweet Jesus, there are a hell of a lot of them, still screaming around these desert city crap tables at 4:30 on a Sunday morning. Still humping the American dream, that vision of the big winner somehow emerging from the last-minute pre-dawn chaos of a stale Vegas casino. Big strike in Silver City. Beat the dealer and go home rich. Once back in the room, though, Gonzo is sitting in the bathtub screaming for Duke to play White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane. He even has a knife in the bathtub, and he's swinging it around. And then he asks, you know, after the song ends, he then asks Duke to throw the radio in the bathtub basically to kill him, you know, to electrocute him. And Duke doesn't want to do this because he just doesn't want the hassle of the cops. And he also knows that, you know, Gonzo is just freaking out because he's on, you know, an acid trip. And then Gonzo wants to try to kill Duke, and Duke just wants to get to sleep. You know, Rael just wants to get to sleep. And so he's like, okay, if you don't stop, you know, messing around, I'm gonna call the cops. And Gonzo, you know, stops freaking out for a bit, and then Duke locks him in the bathroom and goes to sleep. We then get to some past insight of the early 60s drug craze and how, you know, Duke first came to try LSD. He first had thoughts to try it from this doctor that was a neighbor of his who knew how to make it, but the doctor freaked him out, so he just leaves the guy's house. He just leaves without telling him. He just leaves. And then he winds up trying it because this guy at this bar is just handing out samples, and he goes to the bar and spills half of it on his sleeve, and this guy comes in and like starts licking it off of his sleeve. And then there's like this really good passage about, you know, the 60s and his time in San Francisco. Strange memories on this nervous night in Las Vegas. 5 years later, 6, it seems like a lifetime, or at least a main era, the kind of peak that never comes again. San Francisco in the middle 60s was a very special time and place to be a part of. Maybe it meant something, maybe not in the long run, but no explanation, no mix of words or music or memories can touch that sense of knowing that you were there and alive in that corner of time in the world. Whatever it meant. History is hard to know because of all the hired bullshit, but even without being sure of history, it seems entirely reasonable to think that every now and then the energy of a whole generation comes to a head in a long, fine flash, for reasons that nobody really understands at the time, and which never explain in retrospect what actually happened. So of course this is a talking about the 60s hippie movement, and during the Vietnam War, which I believe was still going on when Thompson was writing Fear and Loathing. The next day they skip out on their bill, which Gonzo believes to have racked up to about $29 to $36 an hour for the last 48 hours. Nevertheless, Duke believes the magazine will pay for it, and so they sort of skip out, and he takes Gonzo to the airport because Gonzo had bought a ticket back to LA, and since he's going back to LA, he left Duke with the supply of drugs, which causes him to have this really bad paranoia about, the responsibility that he's tasked with, and how he might be caught with it going back to LA. He's basically like a delivery boy. He's delivering the drugs back to LA later on. He goes back to the Mint Hotel, that they skipped out on, and begins, writing up the story. And I don't know if it mentions he's writing up the story, but I don't know if he's writing up the novel like in a meta sort of way, or if he's writing up the actual story that he was hired or assigned to go there to do, the Mint 400. I'm pretty sure it doesn't, like, I'm pretty sure it's like the novel. He's just like writing out his notes and stuff. Finally, the next morning, he tries to slip out on the hotel again, and he's sitting there waiting for his car, waiting for the guy to bring up his car. And he's reading all these newspapers about murders and stuff, and he starts to think like, oh, my crimes on drugs are like not that bad. I'm a pretty responsible guy compared with all these murders. A hotel clerk finds him, and he's like, oh, I've been looking for you. And he gives Duke this telegram that was sent for him, and he's got another assignment, which is to cover a narcotics conference. And then they ask Duke, like, how are you going to pay the bill? He's like, oh, it's Gonzo, it's Gonzo's problem. He's up there sleeping. He manages all my financials. So he's like, oh, he's up there sleeping. They believe, Gonzo's in Los Angeles because he had telegrammed, Duke, but he's like, oh no, it's just code, so he's really up there sleeping. So he skips out on the bill again, and then heads out into the desert. He has some weird experiences in the desert, including this highway patrolman who he believes wants to have sex with him, but he's just like, hey, the highway patrolman's just like, hey, get some sleep, you need to get some sleep, and he thinks he's after him and all that. And then it leads into part 2 of the novel. Part 2, in the beginning, part 2 is concerned with the the coverage of the narcotics conference. Part 1 was concerned with, the Mint 400, but now he's got a new assignment and he's covering the narcotics conference. So Duke checks in another expensive hotel, that's covered by, the magazine, and it's called the Flamingo, like the pink bird, It's called the Flamingo. I don't know if it's famous or not. I've never heard of it before. So once he checks in, this is where he finds Gonzo naked in a room with this girl named Lucy, and he's been feeding Lucy acid. They met on the plane and he'd been feeding her acid, and there's like this sort of a antagonistic thing between Duke and Lucy for a minute, and Duke thinks about macing her. He just thinks about taking some mace out and just spraying mace all in her face, and But he doesn't, because Gonzo steps in. And he basically they go out and get Duke's luggage, him and Gonzo. And while they're talking, Duke says this really messed up stuff about, Lucy. Like, basically he says this really gross stuff. I don't want to repeat it. He says this really gross stuff about how they should pimp her out, basically. This is what they say, what he says, He doesn't use those exact words, but he does this to freak Gonzo out enough to be like, okay, we need to get rid of her. And so they send Lucy off, in a taxi, and she goes to this other motel or hotel, I don't know which, and she calls the Flamingo and leaves Duke a message, and to sort of get rid of Lucy, finally get rid of her, Gonzo calls her up where she's staying at, and he basically pretends that he gets nabbed by the police while he's on the phone with her. he's like, oh gosh, oh Lucy, oh crap, the cops are here, they broke in, and he's like freaking out and acting this out. And for a second, Duke thinks that Gonzo really thinks the police are there, that he's, since he's on acid, but he hangs up the phone and he's just fine. Next they continue with the assignment of, attending the narcotics conference and, taking the coverage of the, getting the, journalistic coverage of the narcotics conference. And they soon realize that at this conference, they know nothing about what they're talking about. There's this guy that claims to be a drug expert, and he's like completely behind on any actual drug knowledge. So Duke and Gonzo are attending this drug conference, and they're high on mescaline, just laughing about how, how wrong the drug presenter is, the drug expert is on drugs. After the narcotics conference, they spend some more time around, Vegas, and they go to this diner called the North Vegas Diner, where Gonzo writes this really gross message on a napkin and gives it to the waitress, and it says something like what does it say, like backdoor beauty? Yeah, it says backdoor beauty, and she freaks out. She's like, she calls him like a fat pimp bastard or something like that, and Gonzo doesn't take too kindly to this because she also said she's gonna call the police. So Gonzo doesn't take too kindly to this, and he takes out his knife and he cuts the wire of the foam, and she's like, oh crap, she's freaking out. She's like, oh crap. And Gonzo, since he has a knife, and he's like, how much is that pie? She's like, it's like so many cents a slice. And she's like, and he's like, okay, well, I want the whole pie. Here's $5. How's $5 sound? Here's $5 for the whole pie. And then the chapter sort of ends, and then there's this editorial note, which I don't know if it's an actual, if it's like a joke or a real, note, but basically the editorial note says Duke broke down, and so the rest is just taken from the tape recorder, and it's actually taken from the actual tape recorder that Thompson used whenever he was, in Vegas. So I'll just play that.
Let me explain it to you. Let me run it down just briefly if I can. We're looking for the American Dream. We were told that it was somewhere in this area, but...
The American Dream?
Yeah, the American Dream.
Kill yourself and go to paradise.
Is that it? Well, we're here looking for it because they sent us out here all the way from San Francisco to look for it. That's why they gave us that white Cadillac there. They figured that we could catch up with it on that. But,
hey, Lou, you know what the American Dream is?
She's asking him. She's asking the cook if he knows what the American Dream is.
Hands get to it. Works now. Well, I got the money.
I think it's down this road.
Now, what is it that you want over here? 5 tacos, 1 taco burger. Do you know what the American Dream is? What is that? I told him to kill himself and go to paradise.
What is it?
We don't know. We were sent out here from San Francisco to look for the American Dream by a magazine, to cover.
Oh, you mean a place?
A place called the American Dream.
Well, isn't that the old psychiatrist club?
I think so.
The old psychiatrist club?
The old psychiatrist club.
It's called the
It's on Paradise.
Hunter.
It's on Paradise. Heck yes.
We found it. Come here.
Now, are you guys serious?
No, well, look at that car. I mean, do I look like I want a car like that?
Could that be the old psychiatrist club? It was a discotheque place.
Maybe that's it.
It's on Paradise.
Ross Allen had the old psychiatrist club. Is he the owner now?
I don't know. See, all we were told was go to find the American Dream. Take this white Cadillac and go find the American Dream. It's somewhere in Las Vegas area. And it's a silly story to do, but that's what we get paid for.
Are you taking pictures of it, or
no pictures.
Or did somebody just send you on a goose chase?
It's sort of a wild goose chase, more or less. I'm afraid maybe
that has to be the old psychiatrist club, but the only people that hang out there is a bunch of pushers, peddlers, uppers and downers, and all that stuff.
Maybe that's it.
Dopers.
Could be it. Is it a big nighttime place, or is it an all day?
Oh, honey, this never stops. But it's not a casino.
What is it? What kind of place is it?
It's on Paradise. The old psychiatrist club's on Paradise.
Is that what it's called, the old psychiatrist club?
No, that is what it used to be, but someone rebought it. But I didn't hear about it at the American Dream. It was something like, it's associated with, it's a mental joint where all the dopies hang out.
A mental joint? You mean like a mental hospital?
You know,
honey, where all the dope peddlers and all the
pushers.
everybody hangs out. It's a bunch where all the kids are potted when they go in and everything. But it's not called what you said, American Dream.
You have any idea what it might be called? Well, where, more or less, where do you think it might be located? We can just drive around.
All right, on Paradise, off of Paradise and Eastern.
Paradise and Eastern.
Paradise and Eastern, but Paradise and Eastern run parallel.
We just crossed Eastern out here somewhere.
Yeah, but I know I come off of Eastern.
Yeah.
And then I go to Paradise. Yeah, I know it, but that would make it then our Paradise around Flamingo right straight up here. I think somebody's handed you a...
We're staying at the Flamingo. I think this place you're talking about, the way you're describing it, I think that, maybe that's it. We just,
What is
it's
that?
not a tourist attraction.
Is that a Las Vegas thingamabobber dealie? The layout?
No, it's a magazine's a San Francisco magazine. We're doing a story for
That has
San
to be
Francisco magazine.
psychiatrist stuff, but my God, these kids go in there are weird out of their
Well, that's why
mind.
they sent me along. See, he's the writer, I'm the bodyguard. Because I figured it would be.
These guys are nuts. They drive their horses in there and tie them up with drive the horses and crap and stuff up. These kids are nuts.
We'll take care of them.
Yeah, they got me lost.
24-hour day violence, is that what we're saying?
Here's the
Exactly.
Eastern.
All right, now here's the Flamingo. Here's the
Teaming.
convention
Perhaps from
center
now on you'll
there.
take my advice.
That's true.
Well, I can't show you this way. I can tell you better my way. Go right up here to the first gas station, which is Tropicana to the right.
Tropicana to
All right,
the
the
right.
first gas station, Tropicana. Make a right on Tropicana and take this way.
Going back.
Right on Tropicana, right on Paradise.
Yeah.
You see a big black building. It's all painted black and real weird looking.
Right on Tropicana, right on Paradise. Black building.
Right,
Okay.
and there's a sign on the side of the building that says Psychiatrist Club, but they're completely remodeling it and everything.
All right, that's close enough for
That's
jazz.
the best I can do for you, honey. I don't know if that's even it or not.
Thank you.
It sounds like it is.
That's the best lead we've had all for 2 days. We've been going around asking people all around.
It's not-
Out here, I can make a couple of calls and sure as hell find out.
Could you?
I'll call Alan and ask him.
Geez, I'd appreciate that if
When
you
you go
could.
down to Tropicana, it's not the first gas station, it's the second. You'll see
There's a big sign right down the street here. It says Tropicana Avenue. Just turn, make a right. When you get to Paradise, make another right.
Okay, big black building. Just like that.
Wow.
24-hour day violence. Drug.
Well, we can certainly use some mescaline. If all else fails, we must get ether. That perfect touch of chlorine.
Maybe put a slow down. Nice doing it once. I keep on drinking these sodas.
Yeah, same here. I'm still stone sober. It's terrible.
So after going to this place called like the psychiatrist office or whatever it's called, or what they believe to be like the physical embodiment of the American dream, it's just a bar, but they find that it's like burned down and it been like they find out that it's been burned down for the last 3 years. It's not around anymore. So they leave, and he eventually takes Gonzo to the airport, where he's late for his plane. So Duke just drives across the tarmac and then lets Gonzo out on the tarmac to get on the airplane. And he's fine. He just gets on the airplane, which would not happen today. This book takes place in the 70s. Today, that would not happen. After 9/11 and all that, which is just crazy to think about. He's just driving on the tarmac and then he just drives off. After dropping off Gonzo. After dropping off Gonzo, he goes back to the Flamingo, the Pink Bird Hotel or whatever the hell, the Flamingo. And he gets a call from this guy at Circus who's like, hey, you were wanting to buy a monkey. So he's upped the price on this monkey. So he goes to Circus and he doesn't buy the monkey. But he says this really funny thing where he's like wanting to take the monkey on the plane and say that it's his kid. I don't know, it's really funny. I thought it was really funny. I laughed. He talks with this guy there named Bruce about the American dream and how Circus really represents that, or I guess the Vegas casino in general, but like it really represents the the American dream. Basically, because the Circus he literally has monkeys and trapeze artists. Like what is more American than that? Like just a casino with a trapeze artist above you. You know, that's pretty American. So he finally finds himself at the airport, where all the other people from the narcotics conference, all the cops and stuff, are all going back home, flying back home, but he snorts some amyls, and then I don't even know if I'm saying that right. I think it's amyls or amyls. I'm not sure, but I've never done drugs. So he gets on the plane, heads home. That's how the novel ends. Let's go on to the analysis of the American Dream. Now that we've gone over the novel, is it just drug-fueled insanity, or is there a deeper literary, theme going on here about the American Dream? I think most people view Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas as just a straight comedy, and Hunter S. Thompson is just a comedic figure. And I think a lot of this is due to Thompson's own, notoriety, as well as just straight misinformation that's just spread about him. Specifically his drug routine, which was, talked about in even the Joe Rogan podcast.
All right, here's his daily routine. 3 p.m., rise. 3:05, Chivas Regal with morning papers. Smokes Dunhills. 3:45, cocaine. 3:50, another glass of Chivas. Another Dunhill. 4:05 p.m., by the way, first cup of coffee and a Dunhill. 4:15, cocaine. 4:16, orange juice and another Dunhill. 4:30, cocaine. 4:54, cocaine. 5:05, cocaine. 5:11, coffee, Dunhills. 5:30, get more ice in the Chivas. Cocaine at 5:45. 6 o'clock, smoking grass to take the edge off the day. 7 p.m.
The day, 3 hours into it.
3 hours in, lit. 7:05, Woody Creek Tavern for lunch. Heineken, 2 margaritas, coleslaw, a taco salad, double order of fried onion rings, carrot cake, ice cream, a bean fritter, Dunhills, another Heineken, cocaine. And for the rest of the ride home, a snow cone, a glass of shredded ice, which is poured over 4 jiggers of Chivas. Okay, so the snow cone is Chivas. Okay, 9 p.m., start snorting cocaine seriously, it says. 10 p.m., drops acid. 11 p.m., chartreuse, I don't know what that is, cocaine and grass. 11:30, cocaine, etc., etc. 12, midnight, Hunter S. Thompson is ready to write.
Wow.
That's when he sits down to write. 12:05 to 6 a.m., he writes. Chartreuse, cocaine, grass, Chivas, coffee, Heineken, clove cigarettes, grapefruit, Dunhills, orange juice, gin, continuous pornographic movies. 6 a.m. in the hot tub with champagne, Dove bars, fettuccine Alfredo. 8 a.m. Halcyon, which is a sleeping pill. 8:20, sleep.
Just to point out, the daily routine of Thompson, its drug use, is false, and was published a satirical biography of him by writer E. Jean Carroll, who makes stuff up throughout the book as a joke, such as her having an affair with Thompson. She does this to make the book resemble Thompson's gonzo genre. Since most people don't know this, and a lot of people had Joe Rogan to put them on to Thompson, it paints a picture of a somewhat clownish literary figure that didn't take much serious aside from drugs. But if you watch interviews and look into the deeper themes of Fear and Loathing, you'll see a rather more intelligent underbelly beyond the surface level drug use. And I'm not trying to sound pretentious with that, as the drug use was a big part of his image, but I do think Thompson had strong beliefs, things that he truly believed in, and values that he held. With that said, let's get into what Fear and Loathing might have to say about the American Dream. To Thompson, the American Dream is a Las Vegas casino where things cost too much and everything is all a gamble. Like Vegas, the American Dream says you can win it all with just a bit of luck and hard work. But a lot of time, the house is the only one winning while people gamble and exploit to try to get to the top. The American Dream is an old dusty skeleton too ancient to be of use to anyone anymore, especially not to anyone that isn't white. But our trip was different. It was a classic affirmation of everything right and true and decent in the national character. It was a gross physical salute to the fantastic possibilities of life in this country, but only for those with true grit. And we were chock full of that. My attorney understood this concept, despite his racial handicap. Gonzo gives his own thoughts on the American Dream. He nodded. "But let's forget that bullshit about the American dream," he said. "The important thing is the Great Samoan Dream." This is sort of, I think, saying that the American dream doesn't really have any relevance for him or really anyone that, isn't white. It's not the same dream, and it's not the same means of pursuing that dream. I think that theme is even more clear when you think about the context of when this novel was written. It was written in 1972, just off the tail end of the 60s civil rights and hippies movement. An important aspect of this book is Thompson being a part of the middle 60s hippie movement in San Francisco. While hippies now become a commercialized image of peace-loving weed smokers, back in the 60s they believed they truly were a generation moving America to a better place with free love, expression, and of course the civil rights movement. Thompson became disillusioned with the movement as the ideals they stood for were lost in a haze of drug use, such as the 1967 Summer of Love in San Francisco. Many died of overdoses in that summer. It was a movement that began with amazing ideals but lost sight of those in favor of acid trips. Much like Duke and Gonzo begin their trip with an ideal of searching for the American dream, which through drug use slowly begins to drive them insane as they can't find it. Don't take this for the novel positioning itself as anti-drug, though, as I don't think it is, and Thompson probably didn't intend for it to be so. I mean, he did so many drugs throughout his life, even after this. What I do believe it is, though, is a showcase of the downfall of a positive movement into devastating debauchery, leaving with it any reality of the hopeful vision that the hippies shared for a new America. We are all wired into a survival trip now. No more of the speed that fueled the 60s. Uppers are going out of style. This was the fatal flaw in Tim Leary's trip. He crashed around America selling consciousness expansion without ever giving a thought to the grim meat-hook realities that were lying in wait for all the people who took him too seriously. After West Point and the priesthood, LSD must have seemed entirely logical to him. But there is not much satisfaction in knowing that he blew it very badly for himself, because he took too many others down with him. Not that they didn't deserve it. No doubt they all got what was coming to them. All those pathetically eager acid freaks who thought they could buy peace and understanding for $3 a hit. Thank you for joining me today on this discussion of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I hope you enjoy my channel and my other videos. If you have any other ideas for videos, that'd be great. But leave a like on this video, subscribe. That means a lot to me. I smile every time I see another person subscribing. I literally do. It's not a lie. So yeah, share if you want, I guess. I don't know. Share with your friends if they like books. Anyways, yeah. Don't do drugs, kids. Wink. Okay, anyways, moving on. Thanks for everyone. Moving on, what am I saying? This is the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching.